session of Creation Weekend 20, what year is it? 2021. Um, it's only February. You don't have to know the year until April. I was in Israel. Yeah, I know. I can't believe it's been a year. Such a cool trip. Such a cool trip, yeah. What a year it's been. What a year it's been. Um, but what we do here at Calvary Bible Church is try to make God more prominent in our lives and in our community. And so we're going to continue that tonight as we continue our focus on creation. We have a short worship set to start us off to help hopefully prepare our hearts and minds for this. We are theoretically online. I don't know if anybody is still with us online, but it will be there if they choose to join us or watch it later. So, Emily, why don't you take it away?
Sing. Why would you stand and sing with us? shall come. Reach out of acclamation and take me home. What joy shall fill my heart? Then I shall bow in humble adoration and there proclaim Amen. You may be seated.
Well, for the last time this weekend, let's welcome back Pat Roy.
Good evening. It's good to see you all back. We've had so much fun being here. Thank you so much. We have been so blessed getting to know you, and this just seems like a wonderful church. You know, so many of you I've talked to have been long-termers or just love coming, and I don't know, that speaks volumes to me. So praise God. It's so awesome that God has brought you guys together as a congregation. Well, tonight I'm going to talk to you about the journey to Novaruptu, and so it's going to be a story I tell you tonight. So just get ready for story time. It's going to be a story with action and adventure, and I'm even going to throw in a little bit of romance, all right, for you Hallmark fans. So, well, okay, I've got people nervous now. Okay. No, it's going to be good. It's going to be good. So anyway, some people may know or at least wonder, well, Pat, how do you know about Novaruptu? The way that our family knows about Novaruptu is I've told you that I'm a media producer in the creation movement. And so Dr. David Shorman, who's done a lot of the work at Novaruptu, came to us and said, Pat, we would love for you guys to produce a documentary on this. And he gave us all of his video footage and all of his information. And then we actually spent a week with him going out and shooting and recreating scenes that actually took place during the eruption of Novaruptu. And so that's the reason that I have the information to bring to you tonight. The neat thing is really nobody in the creation movement knows about Novaruptu. So after tonight, you're going to know more than a bunch of creationists that's out there. Isn't that awesome? So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy hearing the story tonight. And what I'm going to do is start off by praying, okay? Dear Father, I just pray that you'd be with me tonight. Father, I pray that you'd help me to have energy and passion. Father, I thank you so much for Dr. Shorman and those that have investigated Novaruptu. And Father, I pray tonight as I tell the story that I would do it as accurately as I can. And Father, I just pray that it will also be faith building. I just pray this in the name of your son, Jesus. Amen. All right, so I am the director of the Mount St. Helens. Novaruptu, I think, has got to be my favorite. Now, with Mount St. Helens, you guys know all the things that happened there. The eruption took place. Those layers were formed, over 200 layers in less than 3 hours. You've got canyon systems that were carved. It's amazing, but my question is, what if there was a volcano that was 30 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens? Okay, I think you guys are going to have to do the head naughty thing. It's not working. No, sir. I'll try it one more time. Ready? Nope. All right. All right. You're going to have to follow me close tonight, all right? Okay, so what if there was a volcano 30 times more powerful than Mount St. Helens? Okay. June 1st, 1912, earthquakes were starting to rock a little Indian village. Sediment of the Katmai village and the surrounding 100 miles, mostly unpopulated. Soon, families from this area were fleeing for their lives. Okay, and just so you have kind of an idea of where that's at, here's a picture of it in Alaska. It's in the Alaskan Peninsula. Okay, and have you guys ever seen that picture of the bear catching the fish in its mouth? Okay, so that's the area that we're talking about. Katmai Park there, all right? Okay, late in the evening of the 5th, observers at Cold Bay, which was 40 miles to the southwest, noted that the northern sky looked black and stormy, even though skies were clear on the coast. And then the very next day, it happened.
I do not know whether we shall be either alive or well. We are awaiting death at any moment. Of course, do not be alarmed. A mountain has burst near here, so that we are covered in ash, in some places 10 feet and 6 feet deep. All this began on the 6th of June. Night and day we light lamps. We cannot see daylight. In a word, it is terrible, and we are expecting death at any moment. And we have no water. All the rivers are covered in ash, just ashes mixed with water. Here are darkness, hell, and thunder, and noise. I do not know whether it is day or night. Vanka will tell you all about it. So kissing and blessing you both. Goodbye.
So that was an actual, it was a dramatization of an actual letter written by one of the natives by the name of Ivan, who is a fisherman in the area, and he was writing to his wife, and he figured that they were not going to survive it all. So on June 6th, the ground started to shake violently. Kodiak Island heard the blast and saw the cloud of ash from 100 miles away. Ash fell for 3 days, covering the area. It was said that the darkness was so thick during the day on June 8th that it was impossible to see a lantern that was held out at arm's length in front of you. The ash from the eruption traveled all the way to Algeria, over Europe, North America, all the way down, and it did that for about 6 days. You can see there a picture of this boat. Basically, the people of Kodiak Island had no clue what was going on. And so they all ran and got on this boat and just went out at sea, and they stayed out at sea with 500 people on board, hardly room to stand. They were hungry, they were thirsty, and they stayed out there for 2 days on the deck of the ship just thinking that they were going to die. And they had no clue what was going on. Okay, next. People that lived in Juneau, 750 miles away from the volcano, heard the eruption about an hour after it occurred. Isn't that cool? The volcano went off, and it took an hour before the sound waves made it to them. That's really awesome when you think about that. Okay, sulfuric acid actually caused brash to tarnish as far as away as Seattle. Wow. So this volcano, people didn't know what was going on, but it was already having an effect on all these places far, far away all around the world. Back on the peninsula, a river of superheated gases, ash, and dust flowed through the V-shaped valley of Knife Creek, killing all life and flattening the ground into a wide plain. It solidified over 1,292 square miles of rock. Okay, so it was forming new rock as it was going. Well, all of that took place in 1912, but no person had been there to see it. So just a couple of years later, the National Geographic sent in an explorer to check out the area, and he was the leader of this expedition, and they were going out to this really remote place, and boy, they had to survive all kinds of things like pumice storms and rivers that could wash them away and high winds. It was an incredible adventure, and they sent in a guy by the name of Dr. Robert Griggs, who was a Christian.
Today I saw a sight no human being has ever laid eyes on. A region in the great Alaskan wilderness laid bare by a volcanic eruption. The utter devastation will make further exploration difficult. My team and I are running low on supplies. This evening I have left base camp alone to do some scouting. I have not seen an animal or any living creature since entering the blast zone. Tomorrow we hope to send an expedition out from the base camp to find Novaruptu. I'm overwhelmed by the amazing power of one volcano to completely change the entire landscape. We have pitched our tent away from the danger of avalanche from the rocks rolling off the mountains around us. This is such a harsh environment. I know danger is a constant concern, but we're determined to press on. I hope the words on the pages of this journal inspire future generations to explore this amazing place.
So there you go. That was actually the intro to the documentary that we're working on for Novaruptu. So Dr. Robert Griggs was the expedition leader. You can see a picture. He led 3 different expeditions from 1915 to 1919. So, and they just had all of these amazing adventures. Next slide, you can actually see them. Griggs and his team faced quicksand, high winds, pumice storms, raging rivers, and falling boulders. Here's an actual video of them. Is that cool? So there's the actual expedition. Okay, next picture. Okay, whoops. If you can go back one, I'm sorry. I got to be careful not to scratch my ear or anything. Do the old. So, anyway, there was one day on one of the expeditions where there was 3 of them that were at their little base camp that they had. It was Dr. Robert Griggs, it was a guy by the name of Folsom, and a guy by the name of Church. And before they headed out on the expedition, they ate a whole bunch of pancakes. And Church ate so many pancakes that he just felt like he couldn't go on, and he was just going to stay back at the base camp. Ever done that before? Just too many pancakes, right? So he stayed back, and Griggs and Folsom went out to explore.
Should we proceed further, Griggs?
Church is probably wondering if we've been dispatched.
Poor Church, incapacitated by too many pancakes.
At least we had someone to stay back and watch our gear.
I must say that I've been utterly surprised by the lack of volcanic activity that I thought would be manifesting itself in such short order after such a grand eruption.
I would agree, Folsom. Okay, I think we need to get back to where Church is waiting.
All right. The steam we thought we were pursuing has shown itself to be nothing more than clouds.
Wait! Folsom, what do you see down there on the floor of the path?
It appears to be a miniature volcano jetting steam.
The binoculars reveal that you are correct.
What do we do now?
I feel we owe it to Church to turn back. We'll return with him. Okay, follow me back.
Yes, sir. What's wrong, sir?
When I turned back at you, I couldn't help but stare down the valley. Look!
More steam!
I know Church is waiting for us, but he can wait a little longer. Folsom, follow me. Wow! Folsom, look what we've discovered.
The valley's dotted with hundreds.
No, thousands
Could it be 10,000?
of fumaroles. It looks as if all the steam engines of the world have been assembled together and have popped their safety valves at once and are letting off a surplus of steam in concert.
Griggs, we need to get down there and have a closer look.
Let's go.
So can you imagine being out there and being the first people to see this valley with 10,000 fumaroles going off? Dr. Griggs wrote in his diary, he said, the whole valley as far as the eye could reach was full of hundreds, no, thousands, literally tens of thousands of smokes curling up from its fissured floor. The first glance was enough to assure us that we had stumbled onto another Yellowstone Park, unseen and unsuspected by white man and native alike until this hour. I tried to keep my head and observe carefully, yet I exposed 2 films from one of my precious roll and trying for pictures. By the way, kids, the cameras took film. Okay, just wanted to make sure that you understand that. Wanted to make sure you didn't think they were watching a movie out there or something. Roland trying for pictures that I should have known were impossible. It was though all the steam engines in the world assembled together had popped their safety valves at once and were letting off surplus steam in concert. So it was just an amazing discovery that they made, this valley of 10,000 smokes. Here you can see them actually walking along one of the fissures here, one of the fumaroles. Okay, next picture, you can see that they're actually measuring the temperature of one of the fumaroles. So they dropped a piece of equipment down there. Okay, are you guys ready to see Novaruptu? This must look amazing, right? Yeah. You guys know me well enough now, don't you? Okay, here's Novaruptu. Wait, what? Doesn't really look like a normal volcano, does it? Well, I'm going to explain why in just a minute. It'll make sense. But, you know, when I first got the footage, when we first got the footage and we're reviewing it in our little studio, we said, Dr. Shorman, I think you sent us the wrong thing because we ended up getting this picture and it doesn't look really like a volcano at all. And actually, we found out later on that it was. Okay, next picture, Dr. Griggs and his wife, Laura. Laura went on one of the expeditions with him, so there you go. There's an adventure couple for you. Okay, next one. Here's one of their base camps. Next picture, Dr. Griggs writing in his journal. Okay, one night they were camped in their base camp, and they had several different tents and all of their equipment set up, and the wind came up, and it started blowing so hard that it started blowing things away from the camp, and pretty soon it started shaking the tent, and then it started picking up this pumice, and the pumice was just hurtling itself at the tent, and it was actually ripping the tents open. And in the middle of the night, they realized that they weren't going to be able to survive in base camp. And so Dr. Griggs said, men, we've got to get down the valley right away. So everybody got out of their tents, and they just went cruising down the valley. And as that was happening, you can see that, wow, pretty much took it all out, didn't it? Okay, well, now, when you're out in the wilderness like that, how do you cook your food? Well, you cook it on a fumarole, of course. All right, next slide. Now, during the eruption, an earthquake had a mountain that actually slid off, and it slid into the stream, and it started to build up this lake, a bunch of water behind it, and then what ended up happening is Dr. Griggs was there just after that natural dam broke, and all the water came through, and it cut the Katmai Valley, and you can see that there's this huge valley that was cut in a matter of hours. Well, why is that important? Well, I'm sure you guys have heard about geologists say that that's maybe what happened with Grand Canyon, right? Is that the flood washed all the layers in, okay? And usually I trick audiences, by the way. I'm not going to do it to you. You guys are too smart. You guys actually know the answers to all this stuff. But I always ask them, well, what caused the layers at Grand Canyon? Well, the flood. Well, what caused the canyon to be carved? Well, the flood. Well, there's a problem there because, remember, all that material would be soft and sloppy. If the floodwaters are also what carved it, the whole thing would just kind of go whoosh, right? And you wouldn't have a canyon. Instead, we see these really square, steep cuts that were made in the canyon. So what some creation geologists have said is that the flood washed in all the layers, and then there was a natural dam that dammed up the water, the floodwaters, as they were receding. A lot of the floodwaters started planing the canyon a little bit, but a bunch of water was stuck in a huge lake. And by the way, we see a good shoreline for where that was. We can actually find where that looks like that was. And then that natural dam broke later on after the layers had time to get hard and firm, and it went through and cut the canyon very quickly. Well, you can see that canyon up there at Katmai, and look at that. We saw that very thing happen with our own eyes. We saw the exact thing that creation geologists are proposing for the Grand Canyon. Matter of fact, it moved 33 million cubic yards of material in a matter of hours. Okay, and that actually happened in 1915, 3 years after the eruption took place. All right. Why it was choked with pumice and ash, turning upriver stretches of land into quicksand and destroying Katmai village. So there was that flood. Oh, and he said, I found the countryside ravaged by a great flood whose waters were just subsiding. Okay. All right, here's another canyon. Trees were, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, you're already there. Good. Trees were snapped off near ground level for several miles by the violent impact of the water. A fan of huge boulders was deposited at the mouth of the canyon. So you've got water moving these giant boulders. The water volume was so great that it flooded the valley to a depth of approximately 10 feet. So you've just got this huge flood that took place. Okay? So with their 3 expeditions, they got a kudos, a good job from the president of the National Geographic Society. He said their intrepid, intelligent, and faithful services achieved results of historic value and reflect great credit on all participants. So Dr. Griggs did this amazing job, and he ended up writing a book about his expeditions. By the way, you can find this book online for free if you would like to. Just type in Dr. Griggs, Valley of 10,000 Smokes, and you can actually download his book, all right? So there you go. That is the book, and it reads like an adventure book, and it's kind of exciting. They talk about all of their different discoveries and adventures. Okay, are you guys ready to travel 100 years later? Let's all time travel together. Ready? There you go. This is Dr. David Shorman. Dr. Shorman is a creation scientist. He has a bachelor's of science in aerospace engineering. He's got a master of science in marine chemistry, and he's got a PhD in limnology. Can anybody tell me what that is? Who said that? Where? Yeah, good job. Study of limnology, right. It's the study of fresh water and also lake water and how they and salt water and how they interact. Who said that? I still can't see. Good job. You're like the first one to ever answer that. Yay. All right, so Dr. Shorman loved to go on expeditions, and he would take his friends salmon fishing all the time, and they would go salmon fishing at Katmai Lake. Katmai, and there's the lodge that you see there. Now, while Shorman was at this lodge, he actually found Dr. Griggs' book on the shelf. And so he was so intrigued that he got his book and he began reading it, and he said, this has some amazing implications for creationists. And so Dr. Shorman decided that he was going to put together his own expedition and take the team back to where Dr. Griggs had been 100 years earlier. So here's the team that he put together. So I'm going to introduce them left to right. On the left is Kenny, Dr. Shorman's son. Right next to him to the right is Joel. He's a young and accomplished explorer. Mike, the guy in the white in the back there, is a seasoned leader, and he had accompanied Dr. Shorman on many adventures. And then to the right of him is John, who's Mike's son. Now listen to this. Before the expedition, he had recently broken his back and had just healed from that. Can you imagine? And he's about to head out on this huge expedition, right? And then to the far right there is Tommy, and Tommy is one of those guys who just loves the thrill of adventure, okay? So that is the team of people who were on their way. Okay, so what they decided was, for some reason, half the team had to stay behind a day, and so Dr. Shorman and Kenny, his son Kenny, decided that they were going to head out and be a day ahead of everyone else. So here's a picture of, yep, there they are. There's Kenny and Dr. Shorman together. Now, they were going to head to, okay, the only way to get to Katmai National Park is by boat or float plane, right? You don't drive up there, or you don't take the commercial airline, right? So basically, they spent the first night at Brooks Lodge. And Brooks Lodge is a place where a bunch of fishermen fly into, and they fish. And again, that's kind of where you see the picture of the fish jumping into the bear's mouth. Matter of fact, you can see, oh, there you go. Looks kind of familiar, right? All it's missing is the salmon jumping into his mouth. But that's a picture. Now, I don't know, do bears just stand out there all day catching salmon in their mouth? I don't know. Okay, next picture. So the first night, Kenny and Dr. Shorman headed out. So they spent their second night at the Buttress Mountain Range. So now they're starting to hike out into the wilderness, and they're starting to get away from civilization there. No, that's fine. If you want to back up one. There you go. I bet if you hit back and then hit forward again, it'll actually play the video. Okay, there we go. One more time forward. All right, I'm going to talk because I'm probably so loud you can hear me above all the wind noise. rivers. And when I interviewed Kenny, he said, or when we talked to, did an interview with Kenny, he said that he hated crossing the rivers the most. He was really scared because since they were new rivers, you didn't know when they were going to drop off. And you notice he's carrying a stick and he's trying to find where, how deep it is, because at any moment you could all of a sudden just fall into the river. And this river wasn't moving that fast, but they went across several rivers that were moving incredibly fast, and he didn't want to be swept away. So as they traveled, Dr. Shorman was thinking about the stream power law. This equation is used by many scientists to determine the age of a stream or river. It takes into account the rate of erosion, the hardness of the material the stream is flowing through, the size of its drainage area, and the slope of the water flowing. Supposedly using this equation, scientists can figure out how long a river has been cutting through its riverbed. Okay? So that's usually how you would determine the age of a river. But here you can see the River Leith. This was actually discovered by Dr. Griggs, and Dr. Shorman went back with Kenny. It had cut 100 feet deep canyon in the first 5 years. So that's a rate of 20 feet per year. Do you think it was doing that when Dr. Shorman showed up? What if Dr. Shorman had used the stream power law and looked at all that and did all the calculations to figure out how old the river was? Do you think he'd come up with the right age? No, because it hasn't always been moving at the same speed during the eruption, and just afterwards, for the first 5 years, it was cutting 20 feet per year. We see that all the time with catastrophism, as these catastrophes happen, and all of a sudden the catastrophe cuts a huge canyon, and then it leaves behind the river. A lot of time evolutionists or uniformitarianists like to talk about how the river came first, and then the river cut through a canyon. I just heard from an evolutionist just the other day about how the Colorado River cut the Grand Canyon. By the way, I show a picture to my students that I teach. You see this huge picture of the Grand Canyon, and then you see the little tiny river going through it. And I just asked the kids, do you think that river cut the canyon? No. A catastrophe cut the canyon, and then the river came second and found the path of least resistance, right? So a lot of times we see catastrophe first and river second. So it's really kind of interesting when you think about that. By the way, I forgot to mention that Kenny and Dr. Shorman have superpowers. Is anybody into superpowers here? Because check this out. Oh, yeah. So those are actually pieces of pumice, right? Okay, so they don't really actually have superpowers, all right? I just wanted to say that because they look so strong. All right, so one of the things they had to fight was pumice storms, just like that.
Hang on. Can you get one on my face?
They had about 5 minutes, and by the time the 5 minutes was over, they knew that they had to drop to the ground. They had to toss their hood over themselves. They had to protect their stuff and just lay there. And then after the pumice storm passed, they would all get back up again. They would start walking again, and then pretty soon they would hear the freight train sound again. And that's how they worked their way out. And that stuff actually cuts skin and your face and your hands, and it can rip your jackets and your backpacks. And so they had to fight that the whole time they were out there. Okay, so their next night they were headed to the USGS cabins, and there were some very incredibly luxurious cabins. Here's what those look like. Okay, here's the inside of those. So that's where Dr. Shorman and Kenny spent their first night. Meanwhile, the team was back at the Buttress Mountains, the place where they had spent the night before, and they were making their way there. Well, these mountains are 3,356 feet above sea level, and when they were set up there, all of a sudden the wind began whipping really hard, and all of a sudden their tent started shaking and things were starting to get really bad, and Tommy was afraid. He was thinking about Dr. Griggs getting blown down the valley, and so he was praying all night. He didn't sleep. He was just saying, "Dear Lord, please don't let us blow away." And sure enough, they made it through the night, so it was good. Okay, here's an actual picture of the rim of Novaruptu. And so that's where Dr. Shorman and Kenny headed the next morning. There you can see Kenny walking along the rim of Novaruptu. Okay, there we go. Okay, there were 700 feet thick deposit around the vent. Most of that happened in the first 16 hours of the eruption. Okay, now, have you heard about the 40,000 years for the entire rock, but then it came out to several million years for some of the components in it. Well, Dr. Shorman wanted to do the same thing, so while he was there, he took a chunk of rhyolite, which is the rock that's on the dome there, and now the eruption happened in 1912. They got the sample in 2009, and they sent it to the lab in 2012, which is exactly a 100-year anniversary of the rock. So the rock is 100 years old. He had it dated at the New Mexico Geochronological Research Laboratory, and they dated it using the argon method. You can go to the next one, which looks the same. They got dates as high as 5.5 million years old. How old was the rock? 100 years. There's something wrong with that, right? It had 3.6 argon, which translates into ages of 5.5 million years old. The test was wrong by a factor of 55,000 times. Here's the deal. I've got a friend by the name of Dr. Biddle. Dr. Biddle was once talking to an evolutionist on the phone, and the evolutionist said to Dr. Biddle, "Dr. Biddle, how can you believe the earth is young?" He goes, "Listen, on my bookshelves behind me right now, I've got hundreds of books that talks about all the rocks that have ever been dated." He goes, "And they all came out to be very old ages. How could you possibly believe that the earth is young?" And Dr. Biddle was trying to think of a response to that, and all of a sudden it hit him. He said, "Sir, in all of those books you have, can you tell me one time when we dated a rock of known age and it came out correctly?" And the guy said, "I don't know of any." So listen to me again, and I've talked to lots of people about this, and I've asked a lot of people. We have all kinds of volcanic eruptions where we know when they happened, and every time those rocks have been dated, they never come out to the right date. Wow, that says a lot, doesn't it? Very interesting. Well, Kenny and Dr. Shorman headed back to their cabin, and that's when the rest of the team met up with them. And so there they all are together. Again, back at the cabin. Next picture, there they are hanging out. Okay, now I mentioned to you the romance part, right? Okay, so here comes the love interest, all right? There she is. Her name is Ashley, and Kenny felt like he was falling in love with Ashley and that she was going to be the one. And during the expedition, she was actually in Hawaii. Well, now the guys had a satellite phone just in case there was an emergency, right? Very important. Imagine if something happened terrible out there, you would need to call on your phone to get rescue, right? Well, Kenny didn't tell anybody, but whenever they were off doing something else, Kenny was sneaking phone calls on the satellite phone to Ashley. And guess what? One time he went to make a call, and he was out of minutes. And so for the rest of the expedition, he was praying because if there was some kind of emergency, he could not have called, right? And he didn't confess it to anybody until after they got back. They were at a pizza restaurant, and Kenny said, "Little something to tell you guys." So there you go. There's some of the romance. We'll get more into that later. The next morning, they woke up, and the whole team went back to Novaruptu again. Okay, here's another great shot of what the mountain looks like, the volcano. There you go. Does not look like a volcano, does it? So what exactly happened here on June 6th through 8th of 1912? The eruption took place in 60 hours, which have been divided into 5 different episodes. So I'm going to run through those with you real quick. Episode number 1, the eruption took place in 60 hours. Oops, I just said that. And so basically, let's head through them. Let's go back one. I'm so sorry. Episode 1 lasted for 16 hours and accounted for 70% of the material that would be ejected. Okay, so here's the picture of the real volcano, all right? This is Mount Katmai, and it's actually 6 miles away from the Novaruptu vent. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon on June 6, 1912, some of the material began to erupt from Mount Katmai, okay? The actual volcano was starting to erupt. Okay, next picture. Under extreme pressure, the material began to blow out a lower vent. So basically what happened is that all of a sudden Katmai just collapsed in on itself, and it was like the old backed up toilet trick, right? When it collapsed on itself, all of a sudden everything backed up and it blew out a vent below, and that's what Novaruptu was. Okay, so the real volcano got to eject 1,000. Okay, I'm sorry. So it was 1,000 feet of cubic feet, I believe, that fell into the volcano that actually plugged it up. Okay, next picture. Yeah, I'm so sorry. Yeah, let me explain this picture real quick. So there's Mount Katmai, which is the real volcano. And so it began erupting, and you can see in the diagram, it actually collapsed in on itself, and then the whole system backed up, and all of a sudden, it blew out of Novaruptu 6 miles away. Thank you for asking that. Sometimes I'm running too fast. Okay, during this first episode, it deposited 9 distinct deposits filling the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. It caused flows moving at speeds of more than 450 miles per hour. It began with rhyolite material and eventually began releasing dacite. It was about 6 hours into this eruption when Mount Katmai collapsed, releasing mud flows, ash, and hydrothermal rock matrix. During the first 11 hours of the eruption, there was 567 tons of material ejected from Novaruptu's vent every second. Holy smokes. Literally. At the end of episode 1, there was a short pause of a few hours. Okay, episode 2. Episode 2 was a Plinian eruption, shooting gas and dacite material high up into the air. Although there were earthquakes throughout the entire eruption, the largest took place during this episode number 2, hitting 7.0 on the Richter scale. No wonder they were feeling stuff, right? It blew out almost 3 cubic miles of material, which covered an area of 3,000 square miles. This event also caused a pyroclastic density current. And basically, what a pyroclastic flow is you've got a bunch of gas traveling super fast, carrying all this material, and as the energy starts to dissipate, the material starts to skip along the ground. And so it's just shooting down the mountain, material skipping, and it's starting to create all of these layers that it's making, right? Okay, episode number 3. After a short break, episode 3 shot another 6/10 of a cubic mile of material straight up into the air to fall back, creating even more layers. It also shot out more waves of gas and material. This episode ended as it built up a plug for itself, all right? So it plugged itself up, and the volcano stopped. Okay, and then we've got episode number 4. Episode number 4 blew out the plug and deposited the material around the vent. And then episode number 5. And finally, 5 was another dome building event which replaced the first dome, and that one ended the eruption. And so that's what took place starting on June 12th of, June 16th of 1912. Okay, next one. Like most volcanoes, Novaruptu released a lot of water during the eruption. It was millions of tons of water. Also prior to erupting, some of it was likely in a state known as the supercritical phase. The supercritical point for water is 705.2 degrees Fahrenheit with a pressure of 3,191 pounds per square inch. Wow. At high pressures and extreme temperatures like this, water no longer acts like a liquid or a gas, but something in between. Near this critical point, it becomes very corrosive and can actually eat through rock. And so that's what we believe happened that actually caused Katmai to collapse in on itself. Okay, next. No, you're there. Okay, great. Okay, it's probably the corrosiveness of the supercritical water that helped eat away the insides of Katmai Peak. By the way, when we think of the supercritical state of water and how it can just cut through rock, by the way, I don't know if you guys heard, but there was a dam that almost broke in Oroville, California, probably about, was that 4 years ago, ladies? And we were actually living not too far from the reservoir that was going on with. It was kind of amazing. We went there and saw the water, and in a matter of hours, it had completely broken up the spillway, and then it got diverted, the water did, and it carved this canyon through hard rock in just a short amount of time. It was amazing to see that. So water in this supercritical state can just really carve through rock like it's butter. It's really kind of amazing. So it really kind of helps us think through, because remember what the book of Genesis says, is that the fountains of the great deep were happening, and you've got all these processes going on, and you're kind of thinking about what we see at Novaruptu was probably happening during the worldwide flood as well. Okay, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, the seventh day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were open. Okay, I think we want to, yep, there you go, perfect. Okay, so the next few days were just kind of spent taking day trips. They climbed Mount Katmai. They went and explored some glaciers. They went and visited the original base camp of Dr. Griggs. And they also went to a place called Baked Mountain. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Okay, next one. Practicing their ice axing. Looks a lot of fun, doesn't it? Okay, next one. So Baked Mountain is 3,500 feet and 1,000 feet above the valley. And what did they find on top of Baked Mountain? Seashells. Yes. Nice work. Because you find seashells on just about every mountain, right? Wow, so you've got all these places that were covered by just marine fossils, right? And so right there on Baked Mountain, this high peak, they found it. And that goes along with what the scripture says, right? Which is 15 cubits upward. Did the waters prevail and the mountains were covered? By the way, creation scientists believe, a lot of them believe, that during the flood, you've got kind of mountains and you've got the water covering the mountains. Matter of fact, boy, there's a whole model we could go into. But basically, the water, if you've got catastrophic plate tectonics happening, you've got catastrophic plates dropping, you've got magma meeting with the cold ocean water, it's putting a bunch of steam plumes into the air, and that's coming back down as rain. You've got these tectonic plates that are starting to happen, and you've got some mountains, and you've got the water covering all of the mountains. Well, where did the water go afterwards? Well, what a lot of creationists believe is due to these tectonics, the mountains were starting to push out at the end of the flood, and all the water was going this next verse. So talking about the waters of the flood, thou coverest it with the deep as with a garment. The water stood above the mountains. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hastened away. The waters, talking about the waters, they go up by the mountains. They go down by the valleys into the place which thou hast founded for them. Thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. Wow. Well, that's kind of interesting, right? So does the Bible say there's plate tectonics and superheated steam plumes? No, it doesn't say all that, but it seems like it's a good scientific model for giant mountains before the flood? A lot of creation geologists would say that. They would say that the high mountains came as a result of uplift that happened towards the end of the flood. And they would say that was the mechanism for that water to go back up off the mountains again, sheet across the continents, cause a lot of the erosion we see, and then go back into the ocean basins again.
No wonder the people were crazy. It was all flat.
We could talk a lot about that. Troublemaker. Okay, awesome. All right, next. Okay, here they are crossing one of the rivers. Now, that doesn't look super dangerous, but there were some spots where if they had fallen in, the water was moving so quick, it would just sweep them right down before they were able to get back out, and so they were very nervous about that. Okay, next one. All right, so The reason I'm reading this to you is I want to make sure I'm being accurate, okay? As they crossed the River Lake, they were surrounded by the layers deposited by the eruption. Many of these layers are known as valley-filling ignimbrite, okay? And ignimbrite is the term for when a volcanic material like rhyolite is trapped in hot gases as they rapidly flow outward from an eruption. Ignimbrites are by far the scariest of all volcanic vents. Rhyolite never forms lava-like flows like the basaltic flows of the Hawaiian Islands because it's too sticky. But when rhyolite magma at depth has sufficiently dissolved into water, and then that liquid water finally flashes into steam, the whole mass goes instant expansion like a bomb. And so those are the things that were going on during Novaruptu. You can see these huge deposits just for hundreds and hundreds of square miles, right? Just incredible. Okay, please advance, even though it doesn't look like there's any difference. Once the energized material exited the vent, some of it formed into a ground-hugging slurry of hot gas, vapor, and ash that flowed at terrific speeds. While it traveled outward from the blast, water in the ash particles continued to expand, keeping the whole mass energized. So ignimbrites can cover incredible distances, even across water bodies, in no time. Okay, next one advances, looks the same. Novaruptu deposits consist of two main types. There's fall deposits and flow deposits. The valley-filling ignimbrites are flow deposits that poured out of Novaruptu's vent. In some places along the River Lake, these 9 ignimbrite packages, which Griggs called sand flows, that's what he called them in his book, are actually over 100 feet thick. Some of the layers are very soft sandstone-like rock that you can crumble in your hands. By the way, this is the only ignimbrite flow that we've actually witnessed in modern history. All right, next one looks the same. Okay, some of these materials were so hot the particles were actually melted together, which is known as a welded ignimbrite. Okay, next slide looks the same. The other deposits were, so I can have my notes. You guys already knew. Oh, are you reading along with me? Whew, there's a lot of words there, isn't there? The other deposits were fall deposits that are composed of ash and pumice, mainly from Novaruptu, but they also include a special deposit called HEPI, which is H-E-P-I deposits. That stands for high energy proximal ignimbrite. HEPIs are a type of pyroclastic density flow formed after the superheated clouds of gas and ash collapse on themselves and rush across the surrounding valley and the mountains. So basically, we've just got these incredible deposits that are happening, and as you look at that picture, you just go, wow. All right, we can move on from that picture. Yay. So when we look at this, we can see that with Novaruptu, you've got these massive layers that are forming in just a very short time. Now, when we think about Noah's flood, you know, we've always got the picture of the little ark going along and the little giraffes and everybody hanging out on the deck, and they're just kind of floating along. But think of what the flood must have been like. Earthquakes? Yeah. Tidal waves? Yeah. Tsunamis? Yeah. Volcanoes? Yeah, you know what? We find volcanic deposits all the time in flood-deposited material. So a lot of these processes that we see were going on during the worldwide flood, and it really helps us to understand how the flood could reshape the world like it did. Okay, eventually the guys made it back out of the wilderness and back to the camp. So there you can see them there with the ranger. And that ranger was leading a trip to the Ukak Falls, and so they decided to go. Next picture. Here's a picture of the Ukak Falls. Now, if you see this rock formation that's on the right of the screen there, that's called the Naknek Formation. And it's super fun to say. Naknek. And it stretches from the Alaskan Range in the east all the way past the Pribilof Islands in the Bering Sea, which is over 1,000 miles. And in some places, it's 14,000 feet thick. Okay? Next. This deposit is said to be comprised of rapidly eroded coastal sediments mixed with considerable volume of volcanic debris. Okay, so the evolutionist believes that continents were eroding, and as it eroded, it collected on the bottom, and then eventually there was uplift that uplifted this. And the reason they say that is because it's very obvious that this is water-deposited material. Okay, next slide. The Naknek is a sediment gravity flow that occurs when water mixes with sediment. In a sediment gravity flow, the entire mass of particles and liquid behaves as a single fluid. The amount of material that can be moved by these flows is catastrophic in nature. And so this talks of a giant amount of water depositing this huge amount of sediment. Can you think of any events that might have done that? Worldwide flood? Yeah, I think so. Okay, we also find a large concentration of marine fossils, mostly clams, in the Naknek. Okay, so we know that this was a marine deposited layer. Okay, eventually they jumped in their seaplane and the expedition was over, and you think the story's over, but I hope that you're not too bored because we've got just one last little thing to talk about. Okay, that is when I teach my class. Let's ignore that. Okay, before you go, don't switch it yet. Timing's everything on this one. I told you about the romance, right? So Dr. Shorman got home and he started putting all of his material together, and he said, wait, I've got to go back to the remote area where no man has been in 100 years, the backside of Novaruptu, and I want to document the Ice Age. And so he put together another team which was comprised of Dr. Shorman, Kenny, and Ashley. They were actually married after the first expedition. And by the way, it's so cute. They've now got two twin boys. And it's just God has really blessed them. So here they are heading off on their second expedition, which took place in 2011. Next picture. There you can see them there. Oh, by the way, Kenny proposed to Ashley in August after the first expedition, and they got married on a beach in Kauai. Okay, so on the second expedition, it was Dr. Shorman's goal to demonstrate the creation, flood, ice age, and present. Okay, he wanted to find that in the layers that were there. So to accomplish this, they were going to spend 4 days exploring Katmai Valley, Katmai Mountain itself, and also Noisy Mountain. So that was the goal of the expedition. Okay, you can switch to the next one there. Okay, now they were supposed to land at a place called Dakavac Lake, all right? And the reason they were supposed to do that is the pilot told them that they couldn't land in Katmai Lake because it was too short, and he wouldn't be able to get off the lake again to get back up in the air. And but then as he began to think about it, he said, you know, because I don't have you and all your gear in there, I'm willing to risk it. So I'm going to land at Katmai Lake instead of Dakavac Lake. Now what's interesting is Dr. Shorman had given his wife some trackers so that his wife back home in Texas at the time could track where they were going, and she knew the itinerary, and she knew where they were supposed to be going, and she knew that they were supposed to land at Lake Dakavac. Well, instead, when they saw on the tracker that they were over at Katmai, they began to wonder if maybe the plane crashed. And then the daughter saw that that tracker was starting to move around, and she asked her mom the question, do you think maybe a bear ate them? And the trackers... So, okay, now the other thing is Dr. Shorman asked him, he said, by the way, when I pick you up, because I'm going to be leaving with all your gear and with you two, I can't take off from Katmai Lake. I've got to meet you at Dakavac. And Dr. Shorman asked him the question, well, how do you get from Katmai to Dakavac? And he said, nobody's been back there for 100 years. Nobody knows, right? So there was no maps. There was no trails. There was nothing. And so the pilot basically said, good luck getting there, but I'll land on the lake, and I'll meet you there. And if you're there, I'll pick you up. And if not, I'll come back later, I guess was kind of the plan. So anyway, so they had to make it. So here you go. You've got Kenny and Ashley jogging along the lake. Next picture. Okay, so they came to the place where Dr. Griggs had documented the natural dam breach that carved Katmai Canyon. You can see it here. You can see the 400-foot canyon left behind by those powerful forces. What's running through it? The Katmai River. So it left that river behind. Okay, next picture. Okay, now I should mention to you, this is a pretty extreme adventure, right? Ashley had never been camping before. Yeah, really. So this was Ashley's first camping trip, which is really amazing. Now, everybody knows that you're supposed to break in your boots before you go for a long hike, right? What did Ashley not do? She didn't break in her boots, right? Okay, so as they were out exploring, they came across several places where, go ahead and you can switch. You can see that they came to several places where you see biblical history all contained in the layers. Matter of fact, if you look at the bottom left one, okay, you see the Naknek Formation. What was that from? Please tell me you've been listening. The Naknek came from big, huge layer deposited by lots of water with fossils in it. What's that? The flood, yay! On top of it is glacial till. What does that represent? The Ice Age. By the way, flood, and right here in the rocks, we see that, right? And then on top of that is the Novaruptu deposit. You've got the whole biblical history right there. You've got creation, flood, Ice Age, and then you've got present day deposits that are happening right there. Pretty neat, right? Okay, next one. Okay, so here we are at Katmai. They had planned to climb Katmai again to take some more pictures and also do a little more research. But Ashley's boots were so bad that her feet were bleeding and she was in pain. And basically, Dr. Shorman and Kenny said, Ashley, we can't go up the mountain. And she said, no, I want to go anyway. And finally, they decided that they just weren't going to do it. Her feet were just so horrible that they couldn't do it. So Dr. Shorman went off to make some measurements on a glacier, and Ashley and Kenny went back to cross a river. They were headed
This
back.
is a completely different section of the river than we crossed before.
I know, but look how much narrower it is here. Are you willing to give it a try?
I'll do it. I want to get back to camp and get warm and out of these boots.
Me too. Okay, make sure to use your poles. I don't want you falling into any pits. Okay, let's go together. 1, 2, 3. Whoa! Whew. Oh wow, that's really cold.
I didn't think it was possible, but somehow it's even colder than last time.
Let's get across fast.
Okay,
Ashley!
I'm in above my waist. Kitty, oh please, I can't make it across this.
It's so deep, and the current's running too fast. Don't let it wash you downstream. Here, grab my hand. Let's get back to shore.
I feel as if the wind knocked out of me. It's hard to breathe.
Me too, but come on. We can make it back together. Come on, together. We can do this. Just a little further.
Kenny, I can't feel my legs anymore. Can you?
No, but don't think about it. We're almost back to shore. Come on, 3 more steps. 2. Okay, up onto the bank. Oh.
I'm so tired.
Me too. Let's rest for a second, and then we need to find another spot to cross.
So eventually what happened after that is they found a spot lower and were able to cross the river, and they made it back to base camp. Kenny was able to, he actually cut her boots so they weren't rubbing along her legs anymore. And so they spent the rest of the time out exploring. And then the day came for them to eventually pack up and head back. And remember, they had to make it back to Dakavac Lake in time for the seaplane to be there. But it doesn't show up how to get there on any GPS, and no map really had any trails to get back. So they kind of had to guess, and so they set out to try and make it to Dakavac Lake. And as they were going, they just decided that they were going to head the right direction towards the lake. And they're going, and they're going, and it's hour after hour after hour. And finally, they got to a whole patch of trees, and they They knew that they were starting to get the right direction because all of a sudden there was trees instead of just the barren wilderness that they were out in. But the trees became so thick that they were trying to squeeze their way through and cut through the trees. And it was just hours and hours of grueling trying to get through these trees. And all of a sudden they found out that they had been on this giant ridge that was a dead end. And they realized that their time was ticking. And so they had to turn around, and they went back almost all the way back to where they had camped with their base camp again. And then eventually they made their way, and they actually got to Lake Dakavac. Of course, as the story goes, and it's a true story, they made it there just a short time before the seaplane arrived to pick them up. So that's the story. You can switch pictures there. There they go. Isn't that a great picture? So Dr. Shorman, Kenny, and Ashley. So why was all this expedition important? I'll let them tell you.
I think if others were to have the same experience as we did in Novaruptu, I think that it would strengthen their relationship with God as far as being able to be out in creation and see His power and see that the evidence of what He says really is true, and that just there's something about being out there that I think you put a lot of trust in Him, and it really draws you closer to Him.
Yeah, I think after hiking through Novaruptu, things that I've learned that'll help me in the future is to have patience and to just trust yourself and trust God and know that He's in control, and that you don't need to worry about the little things, that if you trust that it will all work out and we'll all be okay.
I think it's important for Christians to know and that can only be possible by a more powerful being in charge of all of that.
So there you go, the journey to Novaruptu. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing the story, and it's another case where the scientific evidence fits perfectly with the Bible. Guys, we have had so much fun spending time with you. Thank you so much for having us this weekend. Oh yeah, it's been awesome. It has literally been awesome. We have so much enjoyed it. Okay, let me close in prayer. Dear Father, I thank you so much that we can look at canyons, we can look at volcanoes, we can look at rocks. And God, whenever we do, it points us right back to seeing that what you said in your word is true. God, I thank you for Dr. Shorman and his passion to get out the truth. Father, I thank you for the way that you led them to go on these expeditions. And God, I thank you also for Dr. Robert Griggs, the first man to explore. And he was a believer as well. And Father, I just thank you for these godly people who are willing to go out and risk it so that they can have faith-building information to share with others. And so, Father, I just pray for this group. I pray that you would use what we've learned tonight as a tool that they can use to encourage others. And Father, help us not to be information sponges and just take in stuff, but Father, please give us opportunities to use the information we have to share with others. And Father, I pray that you would continue to bless this church. And God, thank you for their long history of having creation speakers come in. God, I thank you that they see the importance of this. And God, I pray that you would use them in powerful ways as they continue to reach this community. We just pray these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. All right. Good night. Thank you.